Good morning. I hope you're doing great out there. You know, as I look back over my life, I've been unemployed 3 times. 4 if you count when I came back off of active duty. You know, I believe it is easier to find work when you're working than when you're unemployed. When you're unemployed, it just seems really hard to find that new job. So I tell people all the time that are upset with their work, don't quit that job until you find a new one for 2 reasons. Gives you a revenue stream through all of that time. And number 2, it is easier to find a job while you're working than when you're unemployed. I, in my career, have been intimately involved in the sale of 3 of the companies that I work for. All 3 of those instances, I left the company after the sale. In Kansas, they were wanting me to move to Denver. They were moving the office to Denver from Wichita. I looked at Denver and there were too many tree huggers out there and people with purple hair for me to move my children out there. Both my parents had just died and we would have been moving our family further away from Kitty's parents. Just didn't want to make that move. Lots of times in the period that I was unemployed, Kitty would say, "What are we going to do?" My answer was always, "The Lord's going to take care of us. Don't worry about it." You know, one time when we moved back here from Kansas, we had 2 mortgages. We had our house in Kansas up for sale and we got an offer on it. And the offer was not exactly what we wanted. You know, those were the days when you would list your house and people would offer below the listing price to buy it. Unlike today where you list your price for X and people get in a bidding war and bid over the listing price, which I think is ridiculous, but that's another story. At any rate, Kitty said, "Do we take that job?" And I said, "I don't know." And I reached in my pocket and I pulled out a quarter. And I flipped that quarter, caught it, turned it over and said, "Yep, it's sold." You know, I sound very cavalier in that. But I just prayed to the Lord. And then I trusted Him and honestly believed in my heart that no matter which way I went, the Lord was going to take care of me. There's a story, it's actually a true story, in Mark chapter 5, right after Jesus heals this lady that has been sick for 12 years and abused by any number of doctors. Verse 35, this reading, I want to stop here a minute. This reading contains a phrase or a sentence by Jesus that I really, really believe on, and I want to stress it before I read this, because Jesus tells this guy at one point, "Do not be afraid, just believe." Now I want to read this story. While Jesus was still speaking, some men came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue ruler. "Your daughter is dead," they said. "Why bother the teacher anymore?" Ignoring what they said, Jesus told the synagogue ruler, "Don't be afraid, just believe." He did not let anyone follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the home of the synagogue ruler, Jesus saw a commotion with people crying and wailing loudly. He went in and said to them, "Why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead, but asleep." But they laughed at him. Can you imagine laughing at Jesus? But they laughed at him. After he put them out, he took the child's father and mother and the disciples who were with him and went in where the child was. He took her by the hand and said to her, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." Immediately, the girl stood up and walked around. She was 12 years old. At this, they were completely astonished. Jesus tells us throughout the New Testament, don't worry, don't be afraid, just believe, just trust in me and trust in the Father. Stay safe, stay well out there. Guess I messed that up.